Elsa Hartono had spent most of her adult life building control. Control over her career, her emotions, her reputation, and the empire she helped grow. At 34, she was already the executive director of Hartono Global Holdings, a powerful business group that dominated several industries across the city. People described her as sharp, disciplined, and nearly impossible to outmaneuver in negotiations. In boardrooms, older executives treated her with caution. Investors listened when she spoke. Competitors learned quickly that Elsa was not someone who made careless decisions. Success had become the structure of her life. From the outside, her life looked almost flawless. She lived in a modern penthouse overlooking the city skyline, drove a car that quietly announced wealth without shouting it, and maintained a schedule so precise that every hour had purpose. But the part of her life that fascinated people the most was her engagement. Adrian Wijaya. Tall, charming, articulate, and ambitious, Adrian was quickly rising through the corporate world as a senior executive in a major technology firm. When Elsa and Adrian announced their engagement 8 months earlier, business circles immediately began discussing it as more than a simple marriage. It was an alliance, two powerful families, two ambitious leaders, a union that seemed destined to strengthen influence across multiple industries. Magazines had even begun speculating about their wedding. The corporate power couple, one headline had called them. For months, Elsa believed the same thing. At first, their relationship had felt balanced and natural. Adrian understood her demanding career and never complained about her late meetings or constant travel. He spoke confidently about the future they would build together, combining their expertise, expanding business networks, and eventually creating a family. Everything about the relationship had seemed stable, until the small changes began. They were subtle at first. Elsa noticed them slowly, the way someone notices a faint crack spreading across glass. Adrian began replying to her messages later than usual. When she called him in the evenings, he sometimes answered with a distracted voice, as if his attention was somewhere else. At first, she assumed he was simply busy. Executives lived with pressure and deadlines. She understood that better than anyone, but then the pattern started to form. Adrian began canceling dinner plans more frequently. He often explained that urgent meetings had suddenly appeared on his schedule. Sometimes he claimed investors from overseas had requested last-minute discussions. The explanations sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. Elsa noticed something else. Adrian no longer asked about her day with the same curiosity he once had. When they met, his conversations felt slightly mechanical, as if he were following a script instead of speaking naturally. One evening, Elsa invited him to dinner at her apartment. The dining table had been prepared carefully, candles placed along the center, soft lighting reflecting against the large glass windows behind them. The city lights shimmered far below. Adrian arrived 20 minutes late. "Sorry," he said while loosening his tie. "Traffic was impossible tonight." Elsa watched him quietly. He looked the same as always, handsome, confident, polished. Yet something in his eyes felt distant, like a person physically present but mentally somewhere else. "You've been busy lately," Elsa said calmly. Adrian smiled lightly. "The company is expanding a new division. Everything is chaotic right now." Elsa nodded. She did not argue. She did not accuse. But the feeling inside her mind remained. Something was wrong. Weeks passed. The changes continued. Adrian began guarding his phone more carefully. When messages appeared on his screen, he often flipped the phone face down before responding. Sometimes he stepped away to take calls, returning minutes later with vague explanations. Elsa observed everything. She did not confront him immediately, because Elsa Hartono was not someone who reacted based on emotion alone. Her entire career had been built on patience, analysis, and timing. If something was wrong, she would confirm it first. One afternoon, Elsa decided to visit Adrian's office unexpectedly. She had been nearby after finishing a meeting with investors, and she thought surprising him might give her an opportunity to spend time together. Adrian's company occupied several floors in a tall modern office building near the financial district. When Elsa arrived at the reception desk, the staff greeted her politely. As Adrian's fiancée, she had visited the office several times before. But when she entered Adrian's executive floor, something unusual happened. Adrian seemed startled to see her. For a brief moment, barely a second, his expression froze. Then he forced a smile. "Elsa," he said, "I didn't expect you today." "I was nearby," she replied. "I thought we could grab coffee." Adrian glanced toward the hallway behind him before answering. "I'm actually about to enter a meeting." Elsa followed his glance. It was quick, but she noticed it. A small detail. The type of detail that most people would ignore. But Elsa did not ignore details. "Of course," she said calmly. "We can meet another time." Adrian nodded quickly, clearly relieved. As Elsa left the building, the uncomfortable feeling inside her grew stronger. Adrian had not looked happy to see her. He had looked nervous. That evening, Elsa sat alone in her apartment, staring at the city lights beyond her window. Her mind replayed every strange moment from the past month. The distance, the rehearsed explanations, the nervous reaction at the office, the careful way Adrian handled his phone. None of it proved anything. But Elsa's instincts had rarely been wrong. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. If something was happening, she would discover it. Not through confrontation, through observation. The next morning, Elsa began researching something unusual. She studied the operational structure of Adrian's office building. Cleaning services, maintenance contractors, security rotations. Within 2 days, she had identified the cleaning company responsible for servicing the building's executive floors. Elsa smiled faintly when the idea fully formed in her mind. It was unconventional, but extremely effective. People rarely paid attention to cleaning staff. They entered rooms quietly. They worked in the background. Conversations often continued as if they were invisible. For someone who needed to observe without being noticed, it was the perfect position. 3 days later, Elsa stood inside a small service office wearing a simple cleaning uniform. The transformation was almost shocking. Elsa repeated that sentence in her mind every morning as she pushed the cleaning cart out of the service elevator and onto Adrian's executive floor. The wheels rolled softly across the polished marble hallway, the quiet squeak blending into the hum of office life beginning for the day. At first, nothing unusual happened. For several days, Elsa simply worked. She cleaned conference tables after long meetings, wiped fingerprints from glass walls, and replaced trash bags beneath desks where executives threw away documents worth more than some people's yearly salaries. Employees walked past her constantly, speaking on phones or typing quick messages, rarely glancing in her direction. No one looked twice, and that invisibility became Elsa's greatest advantage. She learned the building quickly. She memorized which managers left early, which departments worked late, and which hallways remained empty after 6 in the evening. She noticed which security guards took their breaks at predictable times, and which cleaning routes allowed her to remain longer near the executive offices. More importantly, she studied Adrian. From a distance, Adrian arrived most mornings at exactly 8:40 a.m. He walked quickly through the corridor with the same confident stride Elsa had seen 1,000 times before. His suit was always perfectly fitted, his expression calm and composed. To everyone else, he looked exactly like the man Elsa was about to marry. But now Elsa watched him with different eyes. Vanessa, Adrian's personal assistant, usually arrived earlier. She organized files, prepared meeting documents, and handled the constant stream of calls coming into Adrian's office. She was efficient, professional, and always smiling when executives passed by. Elsa noticed how often Vanessa entered Adrian's office, sometimes with documents, sometimes with coffee, sometimes for reasons that were less clear. The first few days passed without anything suspicious. Vanessa's visits were brief, and Adrian's office door usually remained open during business hours. But Elsa was patient. Patience had built her career. Late one Thursday evening, the building slowly began to empty. Most employees had already gone home, leaving the corridors quiet and dimly lit. The cleaning team had started their final rounds across different floors. Elsa guided her cart slowly down the hallway toward the executive offices. Adrian's door was usually closed after hours. Tonight, it was slightly open. Just a few centimeters. Elsa stopped. From inside the office, she heard voices. Adrian's voice, and Vanessa's. Elsa pretended to wipe the nearby glass wall while quietly positioning herself closer to the door. Through the narrow opening, she could see inside the office. Vanessa stood near Adrian's desk, but the distance between them was not professional. They were standing far too close. Their conversation was quiet, almost playful. "You worry too much," Vanessa said softly. Adrian laughed under his breath. "You're the one who keeps coming back into my office. You never seem to complain." Elsa felt her heartbeat slow, her mind sharpening with cold focus. Then Adrian stepped closer. He reached out and gently touched Vanessa's waist. For a brief second, Vanessa hesitated. Then she leaned toward him, and Adrian kissed her. The moment stretched like time itself had slowed. Elsa's chest tightened as the reality unfolded in front of her eyes. The man she had trusted, the man she was planning to marry, kissing another woman inside his office. For a moment Elsa felt the ground beneath her world collapsing. But her hands did not shake. Her mind did not panic. Instead, she slowly pulled her phone from her pocket. Without making a sound, she opened the camera and pressed record. The small red light appeared on the screen as the device captured everything happening inside the office. Adrian's hands around Vanessa's waist. Vanessa's quiet laughter when the kiss ended. The way Adrian leaned against his desk while she whispered something into his ear. Elsa recorded every second. After several minutes, Vanessa adjusted her blouse and stepped away. "We should stop," she said softly. Adrian smirked. "You say that every time." Vanessa smiled again before walking toward the door. Elsa moved instantly. She pushed her cart forward and began wiping the hallway window again as Vanessa exited the office. Vanessa barely looked at her while walking past. Just another invisible cleaner. Elsa continued working until the corridor fell silent again. Then she looked down at the phone in her hand. The recording was clear, undeniable. Proof. That night Elsa returned to her apartment and watched the video alone in the dark living room. The city lights flickered through the windows while Adrian's betrayal replayed on her phone screen. She did not cry. She did not scream. Instead, something inside her mind shifted. The pain was still there, but it slowly transformed into something colder, something sharper. Determination. The next morning, Elsa returned to the office building, and she kept recording. Over the following weeks, the truth revealed itself again and again. Adrian and Vanessa were not simply sharing a moment of weakness. They were deeply involved. Elsa captured countless moments. Vanessa entering Adrian's office long after the workday ended. Adrian whispering to her while she sat on the edge of his desk. Late-night meetings that had nothing to do with business. One evening, Elsa recorded them laughing together while Adrian wrapped his arm around Vanessa's shoulders as if they were a couple. Another night, she recorded Vanessa kissing Adrian first before closing the office blinds. Each video added another piece to the truth. Sometimes Elsa wondered how long the affair had been happening. Months, maybe longer. And through all of it, Adrian continued acting like the perfect fiancé whenever he saw Elsa. He called her during lunch breaks. He asked about wedding decorations. He discussed honeymoon destinations in Italy. The lies became almost impressive, but Elsa never revealed what she knew. She remained calm, collected. Every night she returned home and organized the recordings. Dates, times, Clear footage. By the end of the third week, Elsa had gathered more evidence than she ever expected. Her phone now contained a silent archive of betrayal. One evening, while watching another clip, Elsa leaned back in her chair and stared at the screen. Adrian and Vanessa were laughing together again, completely unaware, completely confident that no one could see them. Elsa slowly locked the phone and placed it on the table. A private confrontation would be meaningless. Adrian would lie. He would apologize. He would beg. And eventually the story would disappear into silence. No, that was not how this would end. If Adrian wanted to play a dangerous game, Elsa would simply choose the stage. A stage where no lie could survive. A place where the truth would appear so clearly that denial would become impossible. Elsa stood and walked toward the large window overlooking the city. Below her, thousands of lights flickered across the skyline. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. Calm, focused, unbreakable. She already knew the perfect moment. Adrian believed their wedding meeting next month would be the celebration of their future. But Elsa had something else planned. She would not confront Adrian in private. She would expose the truth where it could never be hidden again. That decision settled inside Elsa's mind with the same cold certainty she used when making billion-dollar corporate strategies. Once she reached a conclusion, she rarely changed it. The betrayal Adrian believed was secret had now become a collection of evidence, and Elsa was going to use it. Over the following days, she continued living her life as if nothing had changed. At work, she remained the same composed director who commanded attention in boardrooms. Investors still trusted her judgment. Executives still waited for her approval before making major decisions. But after work, Elsa became someone else. Each evening, she sat at her desk inside the quiet penthouse apartment and reviewed the recordings she had captured during her undercover weeks inside Adrian's office building. She watched them all again. Every kiss, every whispered conversation, every moment Adrian had believed the world was not watching. Elsa carefully transferred the files from her phone to her laptop. She created folders labeled with dates and times. Each clip was trimmed and organized with professional precision. Watching the video still hurt, but Elsa did not allow herself to linger in the emotion. Instead, she treated the recordings like legal evidence. Clear, direct, undeniable. Adrian had built his reputation on charm and confidence. People trusted him easily. If Elsa confronted him privately, he would almost certainly deny everything. He might apologize. He might even try to manipulate the situation. But Elsa had no interest in listening to excuses. She wanted truth, and truth needed witnesses. One evening, Adrian called her while she was still working at her desk. "Are you free tomorrow night?" he asked casually. Elsa leaned back in her chair, her voice calm. "For what?" "The wedding planner wants to show us some venue concepts," Adrian replied. They found a place overlooking the river. Apparently it's perfect for large receptions. Elsa paused for a moment. The irony of the conversation almost amused her. "You seem excited," she said. "Of course I am," Adrian replied. "This is our wedding. Our wedding." Elsa looked down at the laptop screen in front of her. The paused video showed Adrian kissing Vanessa inside his office. "Yes," Elsa said softly. "Our wedding." The following weeks passed in a strange balance between normalcy and preparation. Adrian continued behaving exactly as he always had. He sent Elsa photos of wedding decorations. He discussed honeymoon destinations. He even joked about how nervous he might feel standing in front of hundreds of guests during the ceremony. Elsa responded politely. She smiled when necessary. She nodded during conversations. But inside her mind, a completely different plan was forming. One night, Elsa opened a blank document on her laptop and began outlining the steps she needed. Step 1, organize the recordings. Step 2, choose the correct moment. Step 3, ensure witnesses were present. The perfect moment appeared almost naturally. Adrian's mother had recently suggested holding a formal wedding preparation meeting between both families and the event planners. Because the wedding was expected to be an enormous social event, several business associates would also attend to coordinate logistics. The meeting would take place in a private conference room inside a luxury hotel. Presentation screens would be used to show decoration plans, seating arrangements, and event schedules. The room would be full. Exactly what Elsa needed. She slowly leaned back in her chair and allowed a faint smile to appear on her lips. The stage was already built. All she needed to do was change the presentation. Over the next several days, Elsa prepared the final version of the evidence. She selected the clearest recordings, moments that required no explanation. Adrian pulling Vanessa into his arms. Vanessa laughing as Adrian whispered something in her ear. A long kiss inside the office with the door nearly closed. Elsa placed the clips in chronological order. The video began with their first recorded kiss, then another, each scene slowly revealing that the relationship was not a mistake but a pattern. A secret affair that had been happening for weeks. When she finished editing the sequence, Elsa watched the entire video from beginning to end. It lasted just under 3 minutes. 3 minutes capable of destroying Adrian's carefully constructed image. Elsa saved the file. Then she copied it onto a small flash drive. The device was simple and ordinary, something no one would ever suspect contained a personal disaster waiting to unfold. A few days later, the wedding preparation meeting arrived. The conference room inside the hotel was elegant and spacious. A long table stood in the center, surrounded by comfortable chairs and decorated with floral arrangements chosen by the wedding planners. 2 large digital screens hung on opposite walls. Several people had already arrived when Elsa entered. Her parents were speaking quietly with Adrian's family near the table. Event planners organized folders and laptops while assistants prepared the presentation equipment. The atmosphere felt cheerful, excited. People were discussing flower designs and music selections. Adrian walked in a few minutes later, wearing a tailored navy suit that made him look confident and successful as always. When he saw Elsa, he smiled warmly and approached her. "You look beautiful today," he said, gently touching her arm. Elsa returned a calm smile. "Thank you." Adrian glanced around the room. "I think this meeting will finally finalize everything. My mother is already talking about inviting more guests than we planned." Elsa nodded politely. Inside her handbag, the flash drive waited. The meeting began shortly afterward. The wedding planners introduced themselves and started discussing different decoration concepts. One of them connected a laptop to the conference room screens. Slides filled with elegant wedding designs appeared on the display. White floral arches, crystal chandeliers, luxury banquet tables. People around the table discussed the ideas enthusiastically. Adrian's mother spoke excitedly about color themes, while Elsa's father asked questions about seating arrangements. Elsa remained quiet. After nearly 30 minutes of discussion, one of the planners turned toward her. "Miss Hartono," the planner said politely, "do you have any presentation materials you would like us to show as well?" Elsa reached into her handbag. "Yes," she said calmly. She held up the flash drive. "I prepared something I would like everyone to see." The planner smiled and nodded. "Of course." Elsa stood and walked toward the technician managing the presentation laptop near the side of the room. She handed him the flash drive. "It's already prepared," she said quietly. "Just open the file inside." The technician inserted the device into the laptop. No one around the table seemed curious. Why would they be? It was only a wedding meeting. Adrian leaned back comfortably in his chair while checking his phone. He looked completely relaxed, confident. He believed the next thing everyone would see was probably another set of decoration options. Elsa slowly returned to her seat. Her posture remained calm, her breathing steady. Across the room, the large screen flickered as the technician opened the flash drive. The first frame of the video appeared on the monitor. Adrian was still smiling. because he had absolutely no idea what was about to happen next. The conference room remained bright with conversation and polite laughter as the technician opened the file from Elsa's flash drive. Around the long table, people were still discussing flower arrangements and guest lists, unaware that the meeting they believed would celebrate a future wedding was about to become something very different. Adrian leaned comfortably back in his chair, one arm resting casually on the table. He glanced briefly toward the large screen as the technician prepared the presentation, expecting nothing more than images of luxury venues or decorative themes. Elsa watched him quietly. For weeks she had imagined this moment, not with anger, not with shouting, but with clarity. The technician looked up from the laptop. "The file is ready," he said. Elsa nodded once. "Please begin." The room lights dimmed slightly as the presentation screen illuminated the conference room wall. At first, people leaned forward with casual interest, expecting the next set of wedding visuals. Adrian's mother even smiled warmly, whispering something to one of the wedding planners beside her. But the image that appeared on the screen was not a ballroom. It was an office, a familiar office. For a brief moment, confusion moved across several faces around the table. The camera angle looked slightly tilted, as if it had been recorded quietly from outside a door. The room in the video was clearly Adrian's executive office. Adrian himself appeared in the frame. He was standing near his desk. Someone in the room frowned slightly. "Is that Adrian's office?" one of the planners murmured. Before anyone could ask another question, the next movement appeared in the video. Vanessa stepped into the frame. Adrian's personal assistant. The room felt quiet. At first the interaction between them seemed ordinary. They spoke quietly, standing near the desk as if discussing work. But then Adrian stepped closer to her. Too close. Vanessa smiled. Then Adrian wrapped his arms around her waist. A sharp gasp broke the silence. And then the kiss appeared. On the large screen, Adrian kissed Vanessa with complete familiarity, slow, intimate, and unmistakably personal. The conference room went completely still. Someone near the far end of the table whispered, "What?" Another clip appeared, Adrian laughing softly while Vanessa sat on the edge of his desk. Another, Vanessa leaning into Adrian while he whispered something against her ear. Another, a longer kiss, filmed from the same quiet hallway angle. Gasps echoed around the room. Adrian's mother's hand flew to her mouth. Elsa's father stared at the screen in stunned disbelief. Several wedding planners looked down at their papers, unsure where to look. The technician operating the laptop froze in place. Across the table, Adrian had stopped breathing. His face drained of color as recognition hit him. "What is this?" he suddenly said, his voice sharp. But the video continued. More clips appeared. More proof. Each scene lasted only a few seconds, but together they created a story that could not be misunderstood. Vanessa laughing. Adrian pulling her into his arms. Adrian kissing her again inside the office where he spent his working days while planning a wedding with Elsa. The final clip ended with Vanessa adjusting her blouse while Adrian smiled at her near the office door. Then the screen went dark. The room remained silent for several long seconds. No one spoke. No one moved. Elsa slowly stood from her chair. Her movements were calm and controlled, as if she were about to begin a presentation at a corporate meeting rather than reveal the collapse of her engagement. She walked toward the front of the room, standing where the light from the screen still faintly illuminated her face. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I believe everyone now understands why I asked for this presentation." Adrian abruptly stood from his chair. "This is ridiculous," he said quickly. "This is completely out of context." But his voice lacked confidence. Elsa turned her gaze toward him. "For weeks," she said calmly, "I suspected something was wrong." The room listened. "No matter how carefully someone lies," Elsa continued, "patterns eventually appear." She folded her hands lightly in front of her. So I decided to confirm the truth myself. One of Adrian's relatives spoke cautiously. What do you mean? Elsa looked toward the screen behind her. The videos you just saw were recorded inside Adrian's office building. Murmurs spread around the table. Elsa continued, For 3 weeks I worked there. Several people frowned in confusion. Not as a visitor, Elsa said. She paused briefly before finishing the sentence. As a cleaning service employee, the reaction was immediate. What? Someone whispered. Elsa's mother stared at her in disbelief. You did what? Elsa nodded slightly. I applied to the cleaning company responsible for Adrian's building. With a uniform, glasses, and minimal makeup, no one recognized me. Adrian stared at her as if seeing a stranger. You're lying, he said. Elsa simply raised one eyebrow. Am I? She gestured toward the screen. Every video was recorded by me. The room grew even quieter. Elsa continued speaking in the same calm tone. Late meetings, private office conversations, the moments you thought no one could see. She turned toward Adrian. You were wrong. Adrian shook his head, desperation creeping into his voice. This doesn't prove anything, he insisted. You're twisting. Stop. Elsa's voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Adrian fell silent. Elsa stepped closer to the table. I did not show these videos because I wanted an apology, she said. And I certainly did not show them to start an argument. Her eyes moved across the room. I showed them because everyone here deserved to see the truth. No one disagreed. Adrian's mother looked horrified. His father sat stiffly, unable to look at anyone. Across the room, one of the wedding planners quietly closed her laptop. Adrian tried one final defense. This is a misunderstanding, he said, though even he seemed uncertain now. Elsa's expression remained calm. A misunderstanding, she repeated. She glanced toward the screen again. 3 weeks of recordings. No one spoke. Adrian slowly sank back into his chair. The engagement ring on Elsa's finger suddenly felt heavy. She looked at it for a brief moment. Then she removed it. The small diamond sparkled under the conference room lights as she placed it gently on the table in front of Adrian. This engagement, Elsa said quietly, is over. A wave of whispers spread through the room. Family members began speaking at once. Some angry, some embarrassed, some simply shocked. Adrian sat frozen, staring at the ring. His carefully constructed image, successful executive, loyal fiancé, future husband, had collapsed in less than 5 minutes. But the chaos inside the conference room was only beginning, because the biggest surprise of the day had not yet arrived. Just as voices began rising across the room, the conference room doors slowly opened. The sudden movement drew everyone's attention. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, and several people turned their heads toward the entrance. A man stepped inside. For a brief moment, no one recognized him except Elsa. Her breath caught quietly in her chest. Daniel. He looked almost the same as she remembered. Tall, calm, with the same steady eyes that had once made her feel safe during the early years of her career. His appearance was simple compared to the polished executives inside the room. He wore a dark coat over a white shirt, his posture relaxed yet confident. Daniel paused just inside the doorway, clearly realizing that he had entered a room filled with tension. The silence inside the conference room was thick. Adrian's parents stared in confusion. The wedding planners looked uncertain. Several business associates exchanged curious glances. Daniel's eyes moved slowly across the room. Then they landed on Elsa. For a moment, everything else seemed to fade. The broken engagement ring still rested on the conference table between Elsa and Adrian. The presentation screen behind her remained dark after displaying the videos that had just shattered the illusion of the perfect wedding. Daniel stepped forward. Elsa, he said quietly. His voice carried across the silent room. Elsa remained still, surprised but composed. She had not seen Daniel in nearly 4 years. Their relationship had ended quietly, when her career began demanding more time than she could give to anything else. They had never fought. They had simply drifted apart. But seeing him now, here, in this moment of complete chaos, felt strangely unreal. Daniel approached the table slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, glancing briefly at the people around the room. "It seems I arrived at a bad moment." No one responded. The tension in the air made it clear that something significant had already happened. Daniel looked back at Elsa. "I heard about the meeting today," he said. "Someone told me the wedding planning was happening here." Adrian suddenly stood again, clearly irritated. "And who exactly are you?" he asked sharply. Daniel turned his head, slightly toward him. "My name is Daniel," he replied calmly. Adrian scoffed. "This is a private meeting." "Yes," Daniel said quietly. "I can see that." He looked back toward Elsa. "I didn't come here to interrupt anything." His voice softened slightly. "I came to wish you well." The room remained silent as Daniel spoke. "I only recently heard about your engagement," he continued. "I thought perhaps I should say congratulations in person." Daniel paused, glancing briefly toward the large screen behind Elsa. "But clearly things have changed." No one argued with that statement. Adrian shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware that every person in the room had just witnessed his betrayal. Daniel stepped closer to Elsa, stopping a few feet away from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Years of memories seemed to hang quietly between them. Then Daniel exhaled slowly. "I saw part of the presentation outside," he said honestly. Elsa raised her eyebrows slightly. "You were watching." Daniel nodded once. The door wasn't completely closed. A few uncomfortable murmurs spread across the room. Daniel's eyes returned to Elsa. "I didn't plan to witness something like that today." He glanced briefly toward Adrian. "But now that I have, I feel like I should say something." Adrian folded his arms, clearly annoyed. "This is none of your business." Daniel did not respond to him. Instead, he kept his attention on Elsa. "I remember who you are," Daniel said quietly. "I remember the woman who stayed up all night studying business strategies while everyone else slept." Elsa's expression softened slightly. "I remember the woman who refused to give up even when everyone said she was too young to run a company." The room listened carefully. Daniel continued, "And I remember the woman who always believed loyalty mattered more than convenience." His words hung in the air. Adrian shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Daniel looked around the room briefly. "I don't know most of the people here," he said calmly, "but I think it's obvious that Elsa deserves respect." He turned back toward her. "Not deception, not betrayal. Respect." His voice remained steady. "Elsa built everything she has with hard work and discipline." He gestured lightly toward Adrian. "And anyone who betrays that kind of loyalty doesn't deserve to stand beside her." The room fell completely silent. Even Adrian did not interrupt. Daniel took one more step closer. "For years," he continued, "I regretted the way things ended between us." Elsa's breath caught slightly. Daniel's gaze did not waver. "I understood why you chose your career. I never blamed you for that." He smiled faintly. "In fact, I admired it." Elsa felt something inside her chest shift, a warmth she had not expected. Daniel continued speaking, his voice calm but sincere. "I didn't come here expecting anything today." He glanced at the engagement ring, still lying on the table. "But seeing what happened, I can't stay silent." He looked directly into Elsa's eyes. "You deserve someone who respects your strength. Someone who values your loyalty. Someone who would never betray your trust." No one in the room dared to speak. Then Daniel said the words that stunned everyone. "If you are ever going to marry someone," he said quietly, "it should be someone who truly understands you." He paused. "Someone like me." The room froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Adrian stared in disbelief. His mother whispered something under her breath. Across the table, one of the wedding planners slowly lowered her pen. Elsa stood completely still. For the first time since the chaos began, her composure faltered slightly. Not because of anger, not because of humiliation, but because of something she had not expected to feel today. Hope. Daniel's voice softened. I'm not asking you to answer right now, he said gently. I'm just saying, if you ever decide to trust someone again. He took a slow breath. I would like the chance to be that person. Silence filled the conference room once more. Elsa looked down briefly at the table, at the broken engagement ring, at the shattered plans that had filled the past months of her life. Then she lifted her gaze again. Daniel was still standing there, calm, patient, sincere. For the first time that day, Elsa felt the tight control around her emotions loosen slightly. The future she thought she had lost only hours earlier suddenly seemed less empty. Perhaps betrayal did not have to be the end of her story. Perhaps it was simply the moment that forced her life to change direction. Elsa slowly exhaled. Then she stepped forward, and for the first time since the chaos began, a faint smile appeared on her face. Not a smile of revenge, but a smile of possibility. Because sometimes, the collapse of one future is exactly what makes room for a better one.